Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you again. Let's start with our meditation. So, we're going to do the scene meditation again, this contact, encourage, expand, and notice. But this time, we're going to do it with the topic of empathetic joy. So, rejoicing in others, ourselves, and other beings' positive qualities, positive circumstances, um, whatever strengths they have, these sorts of things, whatever virtuous actions they're doing, and just getting this sense of what does it feel like to feel joy for ourselves and for others when things are going well. So we do have a tendency to be negative. It's biologically, from a point of view of evolution, we are biased toward negativity. And the reason for this is because as a species, when we were developing, we had to be able to imagine the dangers so that we could avoid them. Like the tiger around the corner. So it's an amazing ability of the mind, of the brain, to be able to anticipate problems and try to keep them from happening in order to stay alive. But unfortunately, in our modern day, and sometimes for some of us, we fall into this being more concerned about the negative, and it really contributes to anxiety and worry. And there's some kind of a statistic, and I don't know how they measured this, but they say that something like 90% of what we are worried about, what we get anxious about will happen, doesn't actually happen. So our minds are very good at making up things, negative things, worries, that don't ever actually happen. And we put a lot of energy into this. We can actually become very distracted by our worries and our anxieties instead of being with whatever is actually happening in the moment. And so one way we can start to work with this anticipation of negativity, of course, we don't want to get rid of it altogether. We need it as a survival. But in order to start to balance this, we do this rejoicing and this sense of gratitude, of finding the positive aspects in our lives, in our environment, and in other people, which again brings us closer to them, makes a connection with between us. When we have this happiness, of when people are kind, when people are sensitive, when they're making good choices, when they're, doing things for others. So let's go ahead and start setting up your posture. Making sure your back is straight, loosely straight, and then take some deep breaths. Just to settle more deeply into your body. Allowing your shoulders to relax and beginning to turn inward. And then bringing to mind a positive motivation. So spend some time thinking about your intentions. And as you think about your reasons for doing this course, also consider how this will benefit others. So spend some time with that motivation, setting a strong intention for a positive outcome. And then today, for this meditation, we're going to start with ourselves. So, having a mirror image or a picture of yourself with you as if you are a third person. Sometimes seeing yourself from the outside can be very beneficial. Seeing yourself from this objective perspective can help you have a more balanced view. And we're going to contact the experience with different roles in our life. So, in relationship to different people or pets or in different circumstances. So, find the place where you are your best self, whether it's with your family or taking care of yourself, whether it's at your job or at your school or at your church or your temple. Sometimes it's with strangers. So find this role, this hat that you play: sister, daughter, mother, father, brother, where you are your most wise and most kind self. And start to contact that feeling of being joyful, being proud in that positive sense, not thinking you're better than everybody else, but rejoicing and being happy in being a nice person, in being a good person to others. And if mistakes come up, you just kind of let those go. Yes, that's nice. But what we're focusing now are the positive things. When you were there for other people, when you went out of your way to be kind, when the focus was on them. And get this sense of being your own cheering section. Lama Zopa likes to say, wow, 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 amazing, amazing, amazing. This is so wonderful. Or when it's your team that makes the goal, how you cheer, stand up and clap, jump up and down. We're having that same feeling for ourselves when we do positive actions for others. And notice what that experience is like. How does it feel to feel really happy about doing well? About recognizing the positive qualities you have developed, your wisdom, your love, your compassion, your caring attitude. And then encourage that feeling, saying to yourself whatever positive words. Wow, look at what you did. That is so great. You are an amazing being. Expanding that sense of patting yourself on the back. I am creating joy in the world. I am showing love to others. How wonderful. And then as it expands, notice what happens. What is that sense of rejoicing? When you deepen it, how far does it go? And if it stops, notice that. You don't have to have a reason. Sometimes there's some resistance there. So just look at that resistance. What is that experience like? And then let's switch to someone else. This time we're going to do a group of people. Might be a little easier. Let's think about all the medical professionals who are fighting in this pandemic all over the world. The doctors and the nurses and the hospital staff, the people in the doctor's offices, the emergency responders, all over the world, the pharmacists, putting at themselves at risk in order to help others, in order to fight this disease. So amazing. Wow, wow, wow. Look at that courage. That selflessness. And what does that feel like? Where do you notice it? In your heart, in your abdomen, in your face, in your arms? And then encourage it with words. Look at that. That is so great. Those people are so kind. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that amazing? Expanding that feeling of rejoicing, of having joy in others' positive qualities. They are so loving. They are so kind. They are so courageous. And notice the effects. You can even notice if this is a little different than when you were rejoicing in your own qualities. What is this process like? What is your experience? And then coming out of the meditation gently. Okay, so let's do some review from yesterday. So yesterday, the new material we talked about had to do with this other way of developing bodhicitta. So this way that we start to orient our intention, our purpose. Oh, sorry, Pema. Yes, sorry.
That's all right. No problem. So,
I'm so focused on my material.
it's
So Pema, our Pema Wangmo is our amazing director of Chichita, and she's going to talk to you for a few moments.
Thank you. Thank you, Wonderful. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Or good evening, depending on your time zones. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, so we are coming towards an end of another beautiful course. So, congratulations, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all your dedication and interests in learning and practicing Dharma. So thank you. And a few of you have made some generous amount of donations. So I want to thank you so much for all the support that you are showing for us. And also I want to take this opportunity to thank Venerable Thomas for being so very kind and generous in sharing Dharma with all of us. And of course, Felipe for the meditations and for all this technical support to make sure that every single sessions of the course goes smoothly and making the recordings available so quickly and efficiently. Thank you so much, both of you. I personally feel so fortunate and lucky to have two of you at Tushita, as well as the other team for, especially at this time, making all these online programs available for all these months. So I want to thank both of them and my entire team for all their hard work and services. And then, so if you liked this course, if you felt the benefit of this course, then I would like to request and encourage you all to make donations so that Tushita can survive this global pandemic, in the context of pandemic, because we have been in lockdown for all these months and it's unlikely that we are going to open this year. So we need your support so that Tushita can survive. So please help us by making donations. So to make the donations, the payment link and the bank details are there given in the email which you got from us when you register for this course. So please refer back to that email, or if you don't have that email anymore, then you can write to us at register@tushita.info. Yeah, and also you are most welcome to make any offerings for Venerable Drolma and Felipe, and you can use also the same link. But when you make the payment, please mention in the comment. There will be a comment box. So mention the comment clearly, like if it's for Tushita or for Venerable Drolma or Felipe, so that we can differentiate easily. Yeah. And then His Holiness is teaching from 4th to 6th of August. So he is teaching on Lama Tsongkhapa's in praise of dependent origination. So he's going to teach from 9 to 10:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. So that is something that you all want to keep in mind and not to miss out. And in relating with that, Tushita is going to organize a review session for that, for His Holiness teaching. So the review session will be on same dates, 4 to 6 of August, but it will be in the evening, 5 to 6 p.m. That is also Indian Standard Time. So the review session will be with Venerable Lexok. I think most of you know Venerable Lexok because he led few of online courses already, and he's one of our visiting teacher, and he's a very experienced and learned Tibetan Buddhist student or teacher. And then we are coming up with another special, very special course with Venerable Geshe Laptorla. He used to be the translator of His Holiness Dalai Lama for a few years, and now he's the director of Tibetan Works and Archives. So he's going to teach Riding the Emotional Roller Coaster on 5th of August. So details are there on our website and our Facebook page and Instagram. So please visit for the details. So this teaching, for this teaching, you don't need to register or anything. It will be on the Zoom meeting, as well as it will be live, so live on our Facebook page. So Facebook page and Zoom link is given there on our website. So please find out the details. And yeah, so please help us to spread the word about all these events. And also, if you have social media pages or whatever, please help us to share and help us to make Dharma reach as far as possible. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. Oh yeah, sorry, forgot one thing. After Geshe-la's course, we have another beautiful course coming up with Venerable Jamyang. So she is going to teach Becoming Your Own Therapist. It starts on 11th to 16th of August. Details are there on our website and Facebook page and Instagram page. And registration is open already, so please register. Yeah, I think Philippe has put up the link already for all the upcoming courses. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the teachings. Have a good day, good night. Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Okay. So really exciting. So much happening. Yeah, and all available. It's really wonderful. We used to have to, to see His Holiness in my country, you would have to pay a lot of money. The tickets were fairly expensive, and they had these huge venues, of thousands of people. And now we can see him in our own living room. It's kind of nice. So do take advantage of that. Okay, so we were talking about what we talked about yesterday, this other way of developing this bodhicitta motivation called exchanging self and others. And the basis is the fact that because of this ignorance in our mind that views the self as independent, it also tends to view the self as more important than everyone else. And the separateness of the self, of course, exists on this relative level. And when we're talking about taking care of basic needs, yes, we must do that. This is important. But then the amount of time we spend focusing on ourselves versus the amount of time we spend focusing on others is actually out of proportion to how we actually exist. When we start doing this analysis, we see that we are not as independent as we believe. So starting to see more that the connections that we have with others. In order to exist, we have connections. And so then starting to shift this focus from only on the self to more on others. Of course, not forgetting us, because we are the instrument. We are the one who is doing the kindness, and we need to be able to do kindness. But it's how much are we actually focusing on maintaining ourselves versus benefiting others and being kind to others. So this equanimity talks about not judging someone, not saying, I'm going to love all these people who are nice to me, and I'm going to reject all these people who I don't like, and then I'm going to be indifferent to all these people who I don't know. Starting to see that everyone deserves love, everyone wants happiness, doesn't want suffering, and starting to have this equanimity about others. And then even bringing up this sense of how self and others are not disconnected. There would not be a self without others. We couldn't conceptually define a self without others being the thing that we are not, right? And the thing that we are not is necessary in order for there to be a thing that we are conceptually in our minds, to have language. So we're intertwined, we're connected in this way. um, Also, this my happiness is important to me. I don't want to suffer, and as much as I feel that, others have the same feeling. They don't want to suffer, and they don't want to, and they want happiness just as much as I do. And the only reason that I somehow think I'm more important is because it's more familiar to me. I know when I don't feel good. I know, I have an experience of emotional pain, and it's very present for me. So I think it's more important just because it's closer. But through analysis, when we start to contemplate some of these topics, we can actually start to feel that other suffering is just as important. Just because it's a little further away doesn't mean that it's not as important. Okay. So we start to use our experiences of suffering in order to develop this compassion. So anytime we hear of people going through a difficult time, or we read in the news about how many loved ones we're losing, um, one of the things I was reading in the news about how difficult it is to get a handle on these huge numbers, because we keep seeing these numbers about this increase of the pandemic and how many people are dying. And in my country, I think it's up to about 150,000 people have died from this, which is more than double the number that died in the Vietnam War, which is where my country went through these major protests. But anyway, one of the things the newspaper said was, imagine a town that size being wiped out. So they gave some examples of some of these towns, or like in India, when we think of a village, how many people live in a village? A couple thousand, maybe a few more, 3,000, 4,000. We're talking about 2,000, 3,000, 2, 3 villages that are totally gone, that all the people in them have passed away. Just to start to, not to create fear, but just to have a sense of, what do these numbers mean? Okay. And we can get in touch with all the families who have lost loved ones. And that's so this sense of compassion, and this sense of other people's suffering is meant to, our response should be a strengthening of our determination to remove that suffering. So our response should not be a helpless, hopeless, fear, anxiety, that sort of thing. It should be a strong push, like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to remove that suffering. I'm going to pray. I am going to meditate on compassion. I am going to act in whatever ways it is possible for me to act. I'm going to be more generous. I'm going to be more kind. I'm going to improve my own concentration. I'm going to meditate. All these things that we're doing to progress on our spiritual path, so we can become of greatest benefit to removing that suffering. So it doesn't become about the people so much anymore, or the animals. It becomes about getting rid of suffering overall as a concept in everyone. Okay. So then we didn't have time. We're going to do this today. Some of the disadvantages of self-centeredness and the advantages of cherishing others. So this, even more with this contemplation, just starts to shift our perspective, just starts to see why it's better for everybody, including me, to be more kind, to be focused on others more, and why it creates misery. They say that the biggest source of misery is our self-centeredness, that's where all our problems come from. And if you look at Buddhist philosophy and this concept of selflessness, and selflessness is not that there is no self. Selflessness is that there is not a certain type of self. This type of self is the independent self, the self that believes that it is separate from all other beings. That's the kind of selflessness that we're talking about. It has other aspects too, but that's the one we're focusing on here. And this belief, and then thinking this self is more important and focusing only on this self, creates our biggest problems. It creates our negative emotions, which make us do negative actions, which create suffering from a karmic point of view. If we're harming others based on our delusions of an independent self, then we're creating situations in which we're going to be harmed. We're destroying our own happiness. So self-centeredness becomes the enemy. And that's why when we do this Tonglen, so when we get down to the bottom, we do this Tonglen, we take on the suffering in order to get rid of that, all the blame. They talk about putting all the blame on that self-centered attitude. Okay, so the actual exchange starts to uplift others and sort of set us aside. We only need so much in order to take care of ourselves, but others are infinite. Others need so much more, and they are not separate from us. And then Tonglen. So Tonglen looks like this. So we imagine a person, and we did this meditation yesterday. We imagine a person in front of us. We visualize how they're suffering, what they're going through, their difficulties, and we imagine taking away that suffering. So pulling it from them in the form of like pollution, or, you know, bad smelling stuff that we like smoke, bad smelling smoke. We take away that suffering. And then when we become willing to take it on ourselves, we transform it. So we destroy our own self-centeredness, and what is released is our love and our love and our giving. So then we send out in the form of light, this love, whatever they need to support them, whether they need basic resources, whether they need medicine, whatever it may be. We visualize sending that out to them, and then we repeat it. And we do this on the breath. Now, when you're doing it in meditation, we may use a few inhales to get the suffering and a few exhales to send the love. So it's only later when you become really familiar with this process that you can do the taking and sending on each breath with each cycle. So in meditation, for a while, you're just focusing on the inhale for a while, and then you're focusing on the exhale for a while. But eventually, when, you know, like when you're walking around, when you're just sitting and being, you can spend, every time you breathe in, you're taking on the suffering of the world, you're transforming it, you're decreasing your own self-cherishing, and then you're sending out that love, which with each breath. And this orients the mind on others. Okay, so let's look at some of the disadvantages of self-centeredness. So when we're only thinking about ourselves, when ourselves are most important, we actually end up doing things which harm others, because we feel like we have to put up these walls, that we have to take from others in order to feel good ourselves. We have to protect ourselves. So we create these walls, and we end up manipulating, using others. If you've ever been in a situation where you really wanted something, we talk about this attachment, this obsessive desire, and this is when it's all about me. And then we end up ignoring others and pushing others aside, and even manipulating in some ways. We had a little bit of a discussion about how in some workplaces there are people who feel the need to put others down in order to, you know, improve their own chances. And this is we harm others, and that comes back. You know, it's a negative action. It's going to result in negative results. And yeah, it does not create happiness. We're easily offended. We're constantly looking at how others are treating us. So then we become really sensitive. oh, that person didn't open the door for me. That person took the last piece of cake. That person was, said something mean to me. We become so focused on other people's, how they're treating us, that we're constantly upset about they're not being who I want them to be. They aren't treating me well. And so we become really sensitive to that, and we can switch that. If I am more worried about how that other person is feeling, how, what's going on with them, then I'm not going to be so offended if they say something. It's easier for me to forgive that and let that go, because I understand they're going through a hard time. And I'm not saying don't set boundaries, and I'm not saying allow yourself to be abused. Of course not. In fact, like we talked about, sometimes setting boundaries is the best for that person. But if we're talking about an orientation where that's all we're thinking about is how people are treating me, and it creates a lot of fear. One of the things that about being really wealthy, that I think is a real downside, is this recognition that you have to protect it all the time. You have to protect your things. You have to protect your money. You have to worry about the stock market and the investments. It's just, so somehow being attached to making lots and lots of money doesn't make a lot of sense. Of course, you want to take care of your family. You want to have enough to be comfortable. But when that's your only focus, it creates so much anxiety and so much fear. And actually, the less you have, the less attached you are to those things. It's the root of dissatisfaction. Being self-centered makes you constantly want, and you're never satisfied. You get something, and then you want the next thing. Whereas the opposite, when you are focusing on others, there's a lot more satisfaction in generosity, in giving gifts, instead of in wanting. At least you have a moment where there's someone may be happy with what you gave them, or you get a sense of satisfaction from simply giving. Right? Not you, right? Lots of conflict. And it, of course, blocks our spiritual progress. Our spiritual progress is very closely linked to developing these qualities of love and compassion. This is how we become closer to, in Buddhism, this is how we become enlightened. In other, theistic religions, this is how we become closer to God. And so this brings us along our path. And of course, it makes the world a better place. It creates, how did we learn love? And how did we learn compassion? It was usually from others who taught us that, who treated us that way. So when we can treat others that way, other people learn also. They have the experience of kindness, and then they model that. That's one of the biggest ways we learn, not by someone lecturing us like I'm doing here. The way we learn is by other people treating us kindly, and that, other people being selfless. I learned so much from my coworkers here living in a Dharma center. It's just amazing to me, their qualities of selflessness, of focusing on others. When they're kind to me in ways, it's just amazing to me, and it's inspiring. Then I want to do that too. I want to be like that. And of course, it becomes this positive cycle. Okay, so some of the positive aspects of advantages of cherishing others is that all beings are happy. I am happy, you are happy, because benefiting you makes me happy. When I'm focused on you, I have more happiness because it's more in line with how we actually exist. So the reality is, when we start to analyze, is that we are all connected, right? When we start to talk about this interconnectedness, when we start to talk about this Deepen and arising, and because love and compassion are in congruence with this sense of how all things are interconnected, then we start to be more in line with that. That creates more joy and more happiness. Whereas if we have this view of separateness, of independence, of me against the world, that actually is not in line without how we actually exist. So then it creates conflict. It's automatically out of congruence with how things are. So then it is creates suffering. It's like you're out of line with things, with how things actually are. You're pushing against a stream. Um, yeah, going against the current. Yeah. That's all I got for now. Okay. We have a meaningful life when we are focusing on others. And you don't necessarily have to be like in the human services, right? You don't have to have a job where you're in the medical field or counseling or social work or something like that. You can be doing this anywhere, any job. You can be helping others, benefiting others, and making your life meaningful. It's an orientation, it's an attitude. Okay, anywhere you can do that. Your family, huge, right? Your family, it's so hard sometimes, especially when we're stuck with our family these days, to not get irritated, and so now we're starting to just shift a little. Like, it's not about my irritation, because you're probably feeling irritated too, and how can we create more harmony between the two of us, make this a better situation, learn from this. We can be happy anywhere, even in really difficult circumstances, because we're focusing on how to help others be more comfortable. I often think about natural disasters and things like, plane crashes and train crashes, and how people just step up. They help others. It's amazing. The human spirit in difficult times. How many times are there heroes there who just they turn to others? They want to help others, and they don't talk about it in the news so much, because it's a common thing. It's not something that is out of the ordinary, so the news doesn't need to report on it, because it's everywhere and it's going on all the time. And so that's something that I think our news is really, the news is about negativity, because that's more rare and that's more shocking. But these constant giving, that people are doing regularly, we don't see so much in the news. People don't want to hear it, right? It's like, oh yeah, of course. We have healthier relationships because we're thinking about others. Our harmony increases. If I am thinking about what you want and you're thinking about what I want, we're going to be much better able to talk about cooperation, to have dialogue, and there's going to be more harmony there. How can we make it a win-win for both of us? How can we work this out? And of course, it sometimes means sacrificing for others, giving in a little bit. Not completely, of course, because that's not going to benefit them, right? It's creating harmony through dialogue. His Holiness talks about this. He's been doing this for 50 some years with China, dialoguing, trying to talk to China, trying to get them to respect and make the situation for the Tibetans a better situation than it was before. So hard, instead of going in there and trying to fight and kill people, okay? Creates positive karma. Okay. So this next topic, I don't want to spend too much time on it, because I have another one that I want to get to. For this next topic, this is actually the meditation that we're going to do today. And this is putting together both of these techniques. So we talked about the 7-point cause and effect, the one that starts off with all beings have been your mother, and this exchanging self and others. And we put those together into what's called the 11-point method. And just one thing about these analytic meditations. if this is your first time doing this meditation, this particular one, or even the 7-point cause and effect, if you've never done it before and the first time you did it, it was with Felipe, or even Tonglen, if you haven't done Tonglen very much, don't expect a lot of a deep feeling to happen in a single meditation. These meditations are designed to familiarize yourself. The word in Tibetan for meditation is familiarization. Okay, it means the same thing, getting used to it. And our minds have certain habits, certain ways of thinking that they've developed over countless eons, right? Infinite lives, our minds have developed a certain way of thinking. So now what we're doing is we're starting to introduce another way of thinking. And so it's going to take some time. It's going to take repeating these meditations over and over again to start to shift our thinking. And it doesn't just have to be on the cushion. You can also be doing this in your daily life. How so often our default mode network, they call it, our default mode network, our way of thinking when we aren't focused on any specific topic, is a self-orientation. It's about me. And so we're trying to shift this to make our default mode thinking about others. And so we can do these contemplations even when we're not sitting on the cushion. And slowly, drop by drop, we eventually shift our perspective to being more focused on others. Just a moment of thinking about the difficulty someone is going through, or when you see someone or you hear someone, this is an opportunity for compassion, or practicing seeing this person was my mother. At some point, I had a very close, deep relationship with this person. Even if I don't know them now, even if this is the first time I've ever seen them, starting to up our view. And we can, like I said, we can do this anytime. It doesn't just have to be on the cushion. The cushion supports it in our daily life. So let's look at these 11 steps, how we put these together. Okay, so of course, always starting with equanimity, this balanced view. And then those first 3 steps of the 7-point cause and effect, seeing all beings as one's mother, remembering the kindness of mothers, and then repaying the kindness of all our mothers. And then we can go into remembering the kindness of others when they were not your mother. So here we talked about this topic when we were talking about the fact that there's no such thing as an independent self. Remembering the kindness, in order, all our happiness, this is the Lama Zopa thing, all our happiness comes from others. We could not be happy. We would not have this precious human life. We would not have all the things. If we really believe that happiness comes from external circumstances, all those external circumstances come from others. This couch that I sit on, the food that I eat, the clothing that I wear, the shelter that I have. And then we start talking about our teachers, the teachers who taught us to be happy, the role models we had in our life who were kind to others. This all comes from others. Okay, so remembering the kindness of others, even if they weren't your mother, this interconnectedness. And then we go to this disadvantages of self-centeredness, which we just went over, and the advantages of cherishing others, contemplating these topics. And then we do this actual exchange of self with others. And this is where we start to see that we are just one person and others are infinite. There are so many others. That is so much more important than just me, especially the selfish me, the self-centered me. That's the me that we're talking about, that is really does not need much. Okay, anything. It's on a conventional level that we need, food, clothing, shelter. But that line, it really starts to change. We start to see how much less we actually need. And then we do some Tonglen, taking and giving. And then we develop this altruistic intention. So this was the supreme thought to take responsibility that I am going to be the one who is going to remove the suffering from all my mother sentient beings. And then the resulting mind of bodhicitta. In order to do this, I have to realize my full potential. I have to become a bodhisattva. In order to be of greatest benefit to all beings, I have to become enlightened. I have to become a Buddha. Sorry, I misspoke that. But first you become a bodhisattva, then you become a Buddha. So bodhisattvas are known as baby Buddhas. And each one of us, mostly, most likely, if you're taking this course, you're an aspiring bodhisattva. Okay, we're trying to get there. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was something called a little bit, I don't have a lot of time, but I do want to introduce this topic because it is a part of this Mahayana path. And I mentioned it yesterday a bit, I think in this class. Where am I? Okay. And it's this mind training. So Lojong. And when we use mind training in this context of the Mahayana vehicle, this greater vehicle of bodhicitta, we're talking about this mind transformation. Thought transformation may be a better translation, thought transformation, where we start to use this difficult situations in order to actually develop ourselves spiritually. So using problems, using suffering, using difficulties in order to transform them, to make them into opportunities for benefiting others, opportunities for becoming a Buddha. So instead of seeing these as obstacles, as things that are getting in our way, we use them. We use them in order to become better people, in order to develop ourselves. So the verses that we're going to talk about are called the 8 verses of mind training, and they were written by a master called Togme Zangpo. Togme Zangpo. He was a Tibetan teacher. And the translation I have here is actually a translation by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is our spiritual director. And he is very much known as being a bodhisattva. So already having this spontaneous, uncontrived wish to benefit all beings. And I could go into his history, but he's an incredibly realized being. And we are so lucky to have him around. He had a stroke maybe 5 or 8 years ago, and we're so lucky that he's still here. And it's through his tireless work that FPMT has established like over 160 projects and Dharma centers all over the world. It's actually the inspiration that he has brought to people and the tireless teaching that he has given. It's very interesting. One of the things that he was known for is that he was not interested in sleep. And when he taught, he would start, he would always come late because he was busy benefiting somebody. And then when he finally started, so say 8 o'clock, he'd start at 8 or 10 o'clock at night, and he would go all night because he wanted us to hear. I really can relate to that because I have such a hard time stopping myself from sharing the Dharma when I only have a certain amount of time. And he was like, I want these people to benefit from the Dharma. And so he just would teach and teach and teach for hours and hours. It was just amazing. 3, 4 in the morning. And then he would go off and do his prayers and start again, at 9 o'clock, and expect the students to be there. It's a very interesting phenomena. It doesn't happen so much anymore because he's in his 80s, I think now, either late 70s, early 80s. And so we don't have that opportunity, but he did this for years and so inspiring, Just amazing. So anyway, some of his wisdom will come through in this translation. So let's look at these 8 verses, and we'll read them all together at first, and then I'll go back and just talk about them briefly. So, determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I shall hold them most dear at all times. When in the company of others, I shall always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart, hold others dear and supreme. Vigilant, the moment a delusion appears in my mind, endangering myself and others, I shall confront and avert it without delay. Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by violent negative actions and suffering, I shall hold such rare ones dear, as if I had found a precious treasure. When out of envy others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. When someone whom I have benefited and whom I have great hope gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. In short, both directly and indirectly, do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers. I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. Undefiled by the stains of the superstitions of the 8 worldly concerns, may I, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. Okay. So you can see from these verses that it is radical. It is, and that's why we teach it. I'm teaching it at the end of the class. It's a very powerful teaching that really turns around this sense of an independent self. We could call it an ego, not in the sense of we need a healthy ego, but in the sense of this ego that thinks it's more important than others, that it is so focused on me, 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 and starting to shift that in a really radical way. And we can see, even when we hear stories. So there's a whole book of stories of the Buddha's previous lives called Jataka tales, and it's often used with children because it's sometimes he was an animal, sometimes he was a farmer. One of the most famous stories talks about when he was a prince and he found a tiger, a mother tiger who had these cubs. And what he chooses to do is he sees that the mother is starving and she cannot feed her cubs. And so she's in danger of actually eating her cubs. And he has such huge compassion. And of course, he's a bodhisattva in this lifetime. He has such compassion for the mother and for the cubs that he decides to sacrifice his own body. So and she's too weak even to attack him. So he goes off and he gets a stick and he cuts himself in order to get her to eat him. So he sacrifices his own body in order that she may eat and in order that she may be strong enough to feed her cubs. And it's actually, he makes a karmic connection to these cubs, and they become his first 5 disciples. So the first teaching that he taught to these 5 ascetics that he had been practicing with. And they, in a past life, were actually these 5 cubs that he saved by giving his body. Now, this is pretty extreme, right? I don't know how many people, some of you maybe, but most of us are not at that level where we can give away our bodies, where we are so detached from our bodies, where we see that this is the most beneficial act for these, four sentient beings for us to give away our body. So you don't want to do this until you're ready, okay? You don't practice this at home. But you can see the attitude that is about giving to others, that really recognizes that there is not a separate self, that we are all connected. And so to see myself, my body, is somehow separate from others, it's an incorrect view. It's opposite to this ultimate bodhicitta. But we move slowly, slowly toward that. So the first two verses in here, I know I'm going over, so I hope you'll be patient with me. But these first two verses, holding them most dear and considering myself the lowest of all, have to do with getting rid of pride, with starting to challenge that ego that thinks I am the most important thing than others. And then the second one is this delusion, seeing that having anger, seeing that having pride, having jealousy, having obsessive desire is dangerous and we need to constantly be working against those, applying the antidotes in order to benefit others. And then these next two is, start to see that even those people who we don't like, even those people who harm us, they are the ones who are going to teach us. They are the ones who are our precious treasure, because they help us to turn our minds toward compassion, to turn our minds toward connection instead of toward separation, instead of toward barriers. And even those people who hurt me, I learned to respect them, to honor them, to have compassion for them, and to recognize that I don't need to be the one who is always winning. In fact, when I accept defeat, they are actually more open to finding within themselves their own kindness, their own compassion, because then they no longer need to protect. They no longer need to separate themselves and say, I'm more important. Even, so it's a tough teaching. It's not easy to do. Even this someone who we're close to, that we care about, gives us terrible harm. We regard that person as our holy guru, as our teacher, as that now I have to find within my heart forgiveness. And forgiveness is one of the most difficult things for our hearts to do, is to actually say, I understand, I can let go of this, and now come back to me. I love you, I care about you. It's so hard to do. But yet these kinds of things are what separate for us from others. They create huge rifts within families. It's so sad when families reject each other. I'm not going to talk to you anymore for the rest of my life. And they go years and then they regret it. It comes to the end of their life and they're like, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen the regret in older people. It's very, very sad. So then the seventh verse, both directly and indirectly, do I offer my happiness and benefit to all my mothers. I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. So this is the Tonglen. And then the last one, undefiled by the stains of the superstitions of the 8 worldly concerns. So these 8 worldly concerns, I'm going to refer you to a book instead of going into them. It's called How to Practice Dharma by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's an amazing book, and it talks a lot about these 8 worldly concerns. And then also we bring in this wisdom, perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. Okay, I'll stop there. Very brief, and there's the link. Felipe put up the link. It's an amazing, amazing book that Lama Zopa wrote. Very, very inspiring. Yeah, he's so amazing. Sometimes I had one friend who talked about his followers can be really really powerful and really devoted followers. And one of the things she said was one of her aspirations is that she could actually, in a next life, that she could actually be as devoted as a follower as some of Lama Zopa's students, because they're so powerful, and it looks so unreal in so many ways, like, devoting years and time, and just amazing selflessness. You don't see it. Okay, so let's go to the discussion groups. Let's see, the question is, how does our relationship with our caretakers teach us love? So how does our relationship with our caretakers teach us love? So yeah, maybe 3 or 4 people. So I guess we're looking at about 10 groups.
Yep, I'm creating
Okay.
groups right now.
Thank you, Deepen. And I'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right.
Okay, so if there are questions, we can take some questions. We're going to go over probably till 9 or a half hour over, so just be patient with me. And if you need to leave, no problem. You can always pick up the recording to get the meditation. But yeah, let's do maybe just two or three questions instead of the whole 10 minutes.
So let's start with Dara, because I know she has to leave quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Venerable Drolma. I really enjoyed the meditation this morning, the rejoicing. And initially it started out really well because I was able to really say, I am a good daughter, And then zap, immediately came in this voice, this old negative, no, you're not a good person, you're awful, you're worthless, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, would you just go away? And it's very frustrating when that happens. And I'm wondering, I thought 2 things. When you talked about the analytic meditations and that our minds have these habits and ways of thinking, and we're introducing another way of thinking and it will take time. Is that part of what I need to do with this rejoicing when that negative thinking comes in? Or do I just say that's negative thinking? Or do I just fake it till I make it? I'm just not quite sure how to how to approach it. Any sort of tips would be helpful?
So we basically have 2 different ways to approach it. One is we do analyze. We can analyze that negativity and see that it isn't true. So we can use our wisdom to start to examine, this label that I put on myself that says I am a bad daughter, and start to look at what are the roots of that label, and the evidence against it, and also that the way in which we tend to contract right, into a sense of self that is only one thing, you know, like related to my role as a daughter, instead of expanding it. This is the analysis of selflessness that we can do. And then the other approach is more experiential. And when we do this experiential approach, one thing we can do is have the experience, recognize with awareness the experience of when I feel I am a positive daughter. So we look at that, like, what does that feel like, and how do I support that, and how do I make that experience bigger? That's that expanding kind of thing. And then what we can also do is, when I have the experience of using awareness of the resistance, where we talk about this notice part, this compassionate presence with this sense of, I am a bad person. I'm a bad daughter. Because our usual response is to resist it, to push it away, to not like it. And that just makes it stronger. It makes it stay. So if we can be present with it, accept it, understand it, start to see its actual nature, which is that it's just another thought. It has no actual anything. We've concretized it. The more we can stay with it with compassionate presence, the more it starts to break up and not be so powerful. But it's when we, it's like Mengur Rinpoche and the don't think about pizza, don't think about pizza. That thing. It's that same, don't think about being a bad daughter. Don't think I'm not like that's that resistance to it, instead of just being with it. Oh, there it is. I'm feeling that again. What is that like? Where is it? What is its actual nature? It has no more power than does anything else. It has its own emptiness. And how do I get in touch with that? How do I experience that? And that starts to break it up. It's like, oh, okay, just another thought. There it is. They call it self-liberation.
That's really very helpful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay.
But I think both are really helpful. The analysis and the experience, both I think we need.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we have Vipali. I had a question from the beginning.
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you, Venerable. My question is actually also based on what Dara said, asked. And my question is that how does one be very compassionate to one's own projection? Now, somewhere I know that this is the part of me that's projecting. And I find it very hard in that moment to be compassionate towards that.
Okay, so let's break it down for what compassion is. So compassion is first caring about ourselves. So developing this sense of, I care about you and I want you to be happy. Sometimes that's why this taking on a third person point of view, where you see yourself outside of yourself, like as someone who is not you, like someone who is sitting next to you. Sometimes it's easier when you see yourself from that point of view to develop these feelings of caring. So you do already know how to love someone. You know how to be caring towards someone. You have that warm heart. And now it's a matter of getting used to putting it on yourself. Having, seeing yourself sitting next to you and having those feelings for this person as if they weren't you. So this is, the way. And then we go to just this empathy. You're going through a hard time. How sad. Like you would feel for someone who you love. You don't want this person to be sad. You don't want this person to go through difficulties. You feel that, you know what it's like, right? And then the next one is this strong wish to remove that suffering, that I'm going to take it away. I'm going to do whatever it takes to take it away. And I have this ability. I have this Buddha nature. Within me is this basic goodness, and I can solve my problems. I have inner wisdom, and so it's like figure out how to do it. This is what this motivation, I can do it, and how do I do it? And so I think that that's really the key, is treating yourself as if you would treat someone who you really love, doing this third person thing.
Yes, thank you. That helps. Thank you, Venerable. Thank you, Felipe.
I wonder if this course, this becoming your own therapist, will really support you. It starts August 11th, and it'll be in the evening Indian time, like 5 to 6:30. It looks really good, and she did a whole course on self-compassion, so you may want to look into that too, becoming your own therapist.
We have a couple more questions, but it's already quite late.
Yeah, it's late. I think would you put up my email?
Sure.
So the drolma.tnl@gmail.
GNL.
Yeah.
Gmail.
So that's my email. For those people who didn't get their questions answered, please email me. But I'm also, sometimes I take a long time to answer my emails, so just be patient. Send it and I will get to it. It just might take a little while. Okay. All right, so let's go to meditation.
Let's do it. Please set up your postures, and we're going to go through the 11-point meditation that Venerable Drolma mentioned today. So as mentioned before, don't expect to have any immediate results with this meditation, and this is kind of a lengthy one, so I can't pause too long for each one of the points, but then you can do it again and again on your own time and deepen more and more in each one of the points. So let's start by preparing the body as usual. Bringing yourself to this experience of calmness and relaxation. Letting go of tension and tightness. Letting go of worries and concerns. Just let the body settle. And so we start the meditation on the basis of equanimity, visualizing friend, enemy, and stranger, and acknowledging that common ground between us all, acknowledging how those labels are not necessarily accurate, they're temporary. And with that mind of equanimity, expanding towards all sentient beings. The next point is to recognize how all sentient beings have been your mother. Using the reasoning of the beginningless nature of the mind. Contemplate on that possibility and the implications that it has. And then recognizing the kindness of sentient beings when they were your mother. Thinking of your mother or main caregiver of this life. How they're kind to you in the beginning, the middle, and end. Think of all the instances of love, affection, nourishment, teachings that you've received from your mother or caregiver. How amazing that is. And even when sentient beings were not your mother, they still were very, very kind to you. Think about every single object, every single possession that you own right now. How it came from the kindness of others. It came to be and it continues to exist due to the effort of others than yourself. Really think how wonderful that is, how kind all beings have been to you. Naturally, thinking of all that kindness that you've received, you would want to repay that kindness. And to let that deepen, you can contemplate on the disadvantages of this mind of self-centered. How only being worried about yourself didn't bring you any good results thus far. We still continue to experience suffering. We still continue to face difficulties. And I am just one. Others are so many. So gently trying to shift that paradigm, trying to acknowledge that we are not the center of the universe, and then contemplating on the advantages of cherishing others, all the good things that happen when we shift our perspective from being only focused on ourselves to including others. And then mentally actually doing the exercise of exchanging oneself with others, transforming others into the main focus of your love and compassion. Going away from those habitual patterns of self-centeredness, opening up in a sense, open up the heart. And so with a mind filled with compassion, we can start the Tonglen practice, taking upon yourself all sufferings of sentient beings. You can do this with individuals or groups, whatever feels more comfortable. And breathing in with compassion, wishing may you be free of all suffering. And then generating a mind of incredible love, This mind which wishes all sentient beings to have happiness and all of its causes. You give out all sentient beings all your goodness and roots of virtue, sending this out as you breathe out with loving kindness. Now we can generate the extraordinary altruistic intention. You can think how we've been meditating on taking upon ourselves the suffering of sentient beings, giving them all the goodness and roots of virtue. But how can we make this actually happen? How can we give beings all the happiness, genuine, lasting happiness? We need to generate this aspect of a sense of responsibility, courage to do something like that. Thinking I am definitely going to make this happen in reality. I will make sure that all sentient beings are happy and free of suffering. How can we fulfill this responsibility? How can we actually make this happen? It is by perfecting ourselves first, by attaining that peerless state of Buddhahood. So in order to fulfill this responsibility, we give rise to bodhicitta, the supreme mind of enlightenment. Thinking, I am going to become a Buddha in order to help all sentient beings, no exceptions. And again, you can take this very strong wish into your visualization, visualizing that you transform into the aspect of Buddha Shakyamuni, sending light in all directions, purifying all sentient beings, leading them to the state of enlightenment. Visualizing all sentient beings around you, transforming into Buddhas, attaining ultimate and genuine happiness. And simply abide in that experience for a moment, rejoicing that you have actually been able to help them, to bring all beings into the state of enlightenment. How wonderful. And gently coming out of the meditation. And going into our dedication. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored and find a repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for being here in the course, and thank you to Venerable Drolma for always teaching such amazing things. So I'm very happy to be able to share all this with you.
Yes, thank you to Felipe for your tireless service. Just for months now, we've been doing this for 4 months and just regularly, always showing up there every day. It's amazing. Yeah, and it's hard without actual people. This is my struggle, but it's so nice to see your faces on the screen. So thank you. And yes, thank you. And keep on practicing and keep on taking courses. And thank you for the benefit that you do to the world. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care. See you next time, whenever.